Very good. The Planning Commission meeting of March 13 will come to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Secretary will call the roll.
Commissioner Castleberry?
Here.
Commissioner Rice?
Here.
Commissioner Tolson?
Here.
Vice Chairperson Mann?
Here.
Chairperson Hodge?
Here. And in a paucity of pomp and circumstance, we welcome Commissioner Tolson. It's nice to have a full crowd.
Thank you very much.
All right. May I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Absent objection, the agenda will be, a motion is made by Commissioner Rice and seconded by Commissioner Castleberry. Absent objection, the agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes. May I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
So motion to approve them. Sorry. Motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Rice. I'm sorry, Commissioner. Jeez. 3 minutes is all it took. Motion was made by Commissioner Mann and seconded by Commissioner Castleberry for approval of the minutes. Without objection, the minutes are approved. Declaration of conflict. The Secretary will read the declaration of conflict.
If any member of the Planning Commission may have a conflict of interest or any reason why that member must abstain from consideration on any matter on this agenda, he or she should so declare at this time.
Are there any conflicts to declare? Seeing none, we'll press forward. Public statements. This is the time allotted for public statements or comments on all items other than public hearing items. Are there any persons in the chamber who wish to speak? I have cards. Oh. Thomas Herdering says agenda item A1. Did you mean 11A1? 11A1, yes. Oh, okay, very good. Very good. Are there any other persons who wish to speak, whether they've submitted a card or not? Seeing none, we'll press forward. Correspondence. Is there any correspondence from the Deputy Director, City Planner?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Hodge. On the dais tonight, there is a memo. This contains some supplemental comments for agenda item 11A1 that were received after the packet had been distributed. They are regarding the modifications to the mitigating monitoring program, as well as clarification of some of the information in the staff report. And there should be a copy at the table outside in the lobby as well.
Is that it?
Yep.
Very good. Consent calendar. I believe that there is no business, no consent calendar, so we'll press forward. There is no continued business. New business. This is the time and place set for a public hearing on the consideration of PDS 1060, TT 6018, the Mitigated Negative Declaration, and the project's mitigation monitoring plan. Are there any ex-parte communications to report?
I had a meeting with Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters and discussed community workforce agreements that were related to this project.
Did you have a name?
Mac McLaughlin.
Very good. Anyone else?
I had I was in the meeting of the Economic Development Committee yesterday that they made a presentation brief about the project.
They meaning the applicant.
Sean, yes.
All right, very good. Any other ex-parte communications to report? Okay. May we have an oral report on this matter by staff?
Thank you, Chairman Hodge. This item before you is actually the third project by this particular applicant group. The first two were on Tapo Canyon, the first being at Tapo in Los Angeles, where the Planning Commission approved a 50,000 square foot industrial building. Then the second project was at Tapo Canyon Royal, which is about a 220,000 square foot industrial building. And now tonight's project at the Murphy property site, as we refer to it here. The site has been vacant for a number of years. It's a difficult site to develop, and this applicant team has done the necessary background and research and analysis to bring it forward tonight to bring you a project. So with all that, I'll introduce Senior Planner Sean Gibson, who will provide tonight's staff report.
Good evening. The applicant is requesting approval of a plan development permit to construct 6 industrial buildings totaling 508,838 square feet and a tentative tract map to subdivide the site into 5 parcels. The Planning Commission's role tonight is to consider the proposed use of the property, the new buildings, overall site layout, and development. The 36.5 acre project site is located east of Madera Road on the north side of Easy Street. The railroad abuts the project site to the north. Existing industrial buildings are located to the southwest, east, and south. There are existing power lines that run east and west through the property, which are exempt from undergrounding due to their size, indicated by the dashed line. Also in that same vicinity, there's an underground Cayugas water line which traverses the site, which will also be maintained in place. A large freshwater marsh and seasonal wetland areas exist on the property, in which a portion will be preserved here along Easy Street. This is the proposed site plan. The site is accessible from Easy Street at Chain Drive. A second private street would be constructed further east off of Easy Street, west of the Millguard building. Both roads lead to the main part of the development where the 6 buildings would be located. The site is proposed to be subdivided into 5 lots. The lot building breakdown is as follows. Parcel 1, building 1 is 8.53 acres here. Parcel 2, which contains building 2, is 9.48 acres. Buildings 3 to 6 are contained on parcel 3, which is 11.48 acres. Lot A is a wetland parcel, which is a 4.9 acre piece of property, and the proposed street, which is labeled as A Street, is 1.14 acres. The applicant is conditioned to construct street and sidewalk improvements along Easy Street and Chain Drive, as well as building out the proposed A Street, which would be a private street. The conceptual landscape plan is shown here, and as common includes drought-tolerant landscaping throughout the site, and including areas abutting the wetland preservation area on Lot A. The applicant proposes to install approximately 543 new trees overall on the site. A 6-foot tubular steel fence would separate the property from the railroad property on the north. Each building will have coordinated trash enclosures throughout the parking areas. Shown here are the industrial buildings. This is building 1 on the west side of the project. It's at 143,000 square feet. Now 5 of these 6 buildings will have truck loading docks, while building 4, which I'll show in a minute, will have roll-up doors to access individual suites. Most of these buildings could be divided into multi-tenant spaces if desired. This is building 2, which is another larger building at 183,000 square feet. This building will have a truck yard enclosure area with a 10-foot high concrete tilt-up design to match the building, which will help screen the loading docks and trucks from Easy Street, which is further to the south. Building 3 here is at 66,000 square feet. Building 4 is shown here at 43,000 square feet. This one allows for multiple smaller tenant spaces, each with pre-designed individual entries along this driveway parking space area. Building 5 is shown here at approximately 46,000 square feet. And finally, Building 6 at the easternmost portion of the property is at 26,000 square feet. It does include a larger yard area that does have the potential to be fenced off and used with possible outdoor storage area. Each of the 6 buildings share the same building style of multicolored concrete tilt-up construction with various offsets, reveals multiple colored panels of whites, beiges, and browns. The public storefronts have blue reflective glass. and metal canopies. These building heights range from 34 to 38 feet. This image shows the perspective of a typical building entrance of the building corner, showing the additional canopy details, the various window design. And this is the corridor where the proposed multi-tenant space of Building 4 is shown here. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve PDS 1060 and tentative track map 6018, along with the mitigated negative declaration. That concludes my presentation. Staff's available for questions.
Questions of staff?
No.
I have a couple quickies. Mr. Gibson, on page 2, under the project description, there's an indication that there is a Callegas water line traversing the site. Has Callegas been advised of that any part of these projects will cover or be placed on top of their water line? Or is that determination been made? Will their water line have building over it, slabs over it?
Yes, Chairman Hodge, both staff and the applicant have coordinated early on with Callegas regarding their easement, and they've gotten an early review of the drawings, and they've come to an agreement to coordinate future construction plan check activities, so that's protected in place, and the final plan check would go through Callegas for their final blessing.
Okay, I went through the, I thought I went through, there were an awful lot of conditions, an awful lot of work done in this project, and I was looking at the conditions, and I don't remember seeing a condition on that. Is that in fact a condition?
There's not a specific condition, but there is an understanding between the applicant and the Callegas that through correspondence that they'll be part of the plan check review process, because they have that right to review those drawings.
Other than having an agreement between Callegas and the applicant, my anxiety, of course, is, I suspect this project will be there a long time. We've seen circumstances where there have been problems with water lines in the Los Angeles area because of age. And I was just curious and wanted to make sure that Callegas and the applicant were truly engaged in this process, so that we don't have water issues for the city in the future. I assume that the Callegas water line that goes through there serves, or at least partially serves, the city of Simi Valley. Is that accurate?
Yes, accurate.
All right. Is this something that we could condition, that Callegas and the applicant get together and come to those conclusions before some level of construction that begins to cover the easement? We
could certainly add perhaps an A condition, which states that the applicant shall provide correspondence from Callegas that they have reviewed the final construction plans and that they essentially give their blessing for proceeding and obtaining the building permits.
Approve it and don't seek to do any modifications. In the meantime, I don't know if there is a weight restriction, whatever it is that Callegas does, that we have something from them saying that Callegas has no objection.
Yeah, that certainly. We certainly can require that to get a formal correspondence, just reconfirming that earlier discussion. Okay, and just for later on, as we get to that stage, if we get to that stage, that would be one of the things I would want to amend, as amended, that'd be a condition. So I'll push on from there. There's an indication that because of the voltage of the power lines, it's in excess of 33,000 kilovolts? Correct.
All right. Is there any, because it's in excess of 33,000 kilovolts, it will not be undergrounded. Is there a safety consideration with respect to not undergrounding those lines that the city has identified, either safety for the people that work there or any, potential failure of the lines? Essentially, what I'm getting at is this: I'm pretty sure there are folks who believe that exposure to very high voltage lines is dangerous to them. Is that something that we've considered or not considered?
We haven't specifically considered. These are the same lines which go east and west on Cochran Street. This is an extension of those lines. So I think the primary thing is that the proper curbing and barricades, either planter curbing the 6-inch curves, which protect the poles from people hopping the curbs, so not hitting the poles, or in rare instances, if we added supplemental bollards at the base of the poles to ensure that there's adequate separation. That could be addressed during plan check.
Very good. Just a procedural thing. On page 36 of the staff report, under conditions, condition B6, under public works conditions, I just want to make sure that this is consistent. It says applicant must design improvements such that all existing and proposed utilities, so existing utilities, are undergrounded per Simi Valley Municipal Code, et cetera. Now, I take it that Simi Valley Municipal Code excludes power lines in excess of 33,000 kilovolts.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I guess that would take care of that. The wetland area. It's in a very prominent location. It separates the two roadways that go into this, and it's right on Easy Street. So it's surrounded on three sides rather, by streets. I'm curious if anything is being done to protect that area from improper use, trash collection, these kinds of things. I mean, is there going to be a fence around it in any fashion? How is it going to be separated from the roadways in any way, or is it just going to remain open land as it is next to sidewalks and streets?
So all that's proposed now is that no new protection is proposed along the streets, Chain, A Street, or Easy Street. There will be sidewalks around the perimeter and condition to provide landscaping outside of the wetland boundary for the balance of that parcel, but no fencing is proposed at this time.
Okay, so that I understand, you said that there's landscaping that's going to be placed or planted, separating or at the sidewalks that are currently there now. Is that going to be next to the street or next to the wetland area?
So some of the wetland area is the wetland doesn't encompass the whole parcel.
Right.
So there's little fringes around the perimeter of the wetland which could be installed with traditional landscaping. Most of that area is, if you look at this image, the wetland will come right up to the sidewalk here, so you won't see decorative landscaping along that frontage. We could require street trees within the 10-foot sidewalk area to help offset that appearance.
What I'm getting at is this wetland area, which in the past has only been bordered by Easy Street, and I guess a portion of Chain Drive, is going to be a whole new street next to it, A Street, probably Allen C. Mann Street, but or something like that, A Street. And there's going to be a great deal of traffic and other, intensity of uses that are going to be next to that wetland area that isn't present today. And I'm just looking at it, and it just keeps singing out to me that this is an opportunity for collection of trash and some issues. And I wouldn't mind seeing some sort of separation between the roadways and that property, maybe even a little sign that identifies it as public wetland area, because there are going to be seasons during the summer. Nobody's going to know it's a wetland because it's going to look like a dry field. But I think it says seasonal, so I assume that that's what that was referring. So maybe we can talk to the applicant, or I'm sort of bringing it up to find out if you've had those conversations, to try to do something to make sure that this provides a little bit of scenic opportunity and not a opportunity for blight.
Yeah, we could look at fencing or signage opportunities. Some of that will be subject to the federal and state permits as far as permitting that, but certainly we could explore the additional aesthetic concerns.
Okay. Those are my questions for now. Thank you very much. Any other questions of staff?
I do.
Commissioner Mann?
So forgive my ignorance. What's the difference between the private street and the public street?
The private street won't be dedicated to the city. It's typically very similar to a public street. It's not maintained by the city.
Same road construction, same street lights, same everything, except the city does not have to maintain it. And if that's the case, I'm assuming there's a road maintenance agreement somewhere in place for the maintenance of the private street?
The CCNRs will maintain the private street.
Which CCNRs for building 1, 2, is the whole project one CCNR?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Which leads me to my next quasi question. So nowhere in the project description or anything that I could find, except when we got to the neighborhood council comments, is this for sale? Is it for lease? What is it? And I don't know if that's staff or actually the developer, the more appropriate person to ask. Is this coming to us as a for sale building, for lease? Does it make a difference in the zoning or the request?
Yeah, we can clarify that with the applicant. Right now, the 3 parcels could be sold individually.
Okay.
The wetland and A Street are intended to be maintained by that association, or the wetland parcel could be sold off to a conservation agency at some point in the future, but they are one project. Parcel 3, which contains the 4 buildings, at this point, they would rent out until they do a further subdivision or condominium map.
So the tentative tract map, the TT 6018, that's to split it into the 3 lots, and then Lot A for the wetland and A Street. That's totally separate. Once the developer has that, he can sell off those lots, doesn't have to actually build these buildings, correct?
That's correct.
Can we condition the tentative tract map for PDS 1060 or no? Oh, that might be a question for legal.
I don't think so.
Okay. So once the developer has the tentative tract TT 6018, he doesn't have to continue through with the project. He can just sell those 5 lots off individually.
He could sell the 3 lots off individually. The wetlands parcel, again, is kind of tied to the maintenance. It's really intended for the association to maintain, or sold off to that conservation agency, but it's not a developable parcel.
And the HOA or the association is lots 1, 2, and 3, regardless of if they're sold off. They're still tied to that HOA.
Right. The CCNRs will tie them together, and any changes in ownership, those CCNRs will carry forward.
Run with the land.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll open the public testimony portion of the hearing. Would the applicant like to present the project?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Sean Kim. I'm the development manager for this project from ZBEC Realty Partners. I'm accompanied by a group of our team here. We have Jaime Cruz, he's our lead architect. Patrick Duras, he's our market expert. Victor Lake, he's our civil engineer, and Tom Hong, our traffic engineer. So I will give a quick introduction to our project, and Mr. Cruz will hit the architecture features, some of the highlights of the project, and Patrick Duras will give us overview of the market and what types of tenants and business we can bring into the city of Simi Valley through this development.
And Mr. Kim, I should have told you at the beginning that you have 15 minutes.
Yes.
You and your team.
Yes.
All right.
So most of the projects were carried by our team member. Just wanted to come up and say this is our 3rd project, and this was the most challenging site. We had to encompass the entire site, go through the different agencies of the federal and state level, and without this brilliant mind sitting next to me, I don't think we'd be able to pull this off. And one thing that I wanted to point it out that last 3 years we've been working with the city of Simi Valley, and one thing we truly learned is how to listen. And without city staff's support and guidance, and especially with the community support, I don't think we can bring this project up to this stage. So that, I'm really appreciate all the support that I get for this project, which made us feel we are part of the community. So with that, we are very proud and humble to present this project to you. With this, let me turn it over to Mr. Cruz.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jaime Cruz. I'm with HPA Architecture, the project architect on this development. And just briefly touching on a couple of the items is very much in what Sean was mentioning is the way we decided to lay out, going through various iterations of how to lay out this site, which was a difficult site, is a couple of items is we knew we wanted to make each of the buildings stand out, but yet we remain within a single language of architectural and our earth tone color base, and provide a 360-degree four-sided architecture on each of the buildings. So part of that is the reason that they're oriented side with the largest building to the left, going towards the east side of the site with these four smaller buildings. And for example, on the larger building here on the west side next to Madero on the further west, is that we decided to face the loading area towards the rear, towards Cochran back here, partly because of the great depth, that the fact that our entire site is actually much lower than Cochran Avenue, which obviously is the main commercial area that existing, the Walmart, the Aldi, and the Home Depot, along with the Costco at the far west side of our site. And in so doing that, we knew that there is existing shopping right at the corner here, right above where the large building 1 is located. So we knew we could face the dock area towards the rear, towards the north. That way we kept the frontage on the south side of this building facing the existing industrial buildings that are in the foreground up against Easy Street. Going with the larger building here in the middle, we knew it would make sense to face it towards the south, knowing that the wetlands is in front of us, where based on the natural topography that's existing, we knew that we can conceal the dock door elevations, and I will show that in a minute on a different rendering of that. And then what we additionally did for these buildings back here, we knew that we wanted to have a main thoroughfare for pedestrian travel, a central main boulevard, which began off their new Street 8 cul-de-sac and runs in between the two buildings here, and going back with a focal point on the back small little building for employee outside and eating amenities. So again, just briefly, the red areas obviously highlighted the geometric shape of our site, very rectangular, going from west to east, with the wetlands sort of being right in the middle on the south side. Just taking you through a couple of the renderings here as we're looking, starting from Easy Street here, as you're going through the existing Easy Street and the existing section of Chain Drive, right up to where we have our new cul-de-sac proposed. Quickly, just want to discuss that our loading area was designed so we have truck maneuvering from each of the locations, showing that in no way does the truck maneuvering going in or out of the dock areas encroach any of the proposed automobile parking that's directly in front of it. And none of the case for the 5 of the 6 buildings. The 4th building up here obviously has no dock loading per design. It's purely made for internal storage through a grade level door. And then again, this is the view looking eastward with the proposed wetlands in the foreground, Easy Street, and then Chain Drive with the proposed cul-de-sac here, and our largest buildings on the left-hand side, and in the foreground, the main larger building, with the remaining 4 buildings in the far background. This is a view from the end of the proposed expansion, the new cul-de-sac off of Chain Drive, looking at the largest buildings, what we call building 1 to the left, building right, and you start seeing the enhanced amount of landscaping that we're proposing on our site to improve the entire area, to make it more pleasing, as you'll see on a couple of more exhibits, on the pedestrian walkways that we have going perpendicular across all of these buildings. This is specifically a view of the largest building, building 2, which you can see also a couple of items is, one is the earth tone colors, the fact that there's a variety of textures and colors, as well as a way to subjugate and divide the size of these buildings into smaller appearances rather than just being a very clunky box location. Also, you can tell the fact that the building is raised up, and it does conceal the dock doors that are in the foreground, even though this is the main entry on this side, the west side of this building, to get into the truck yard. This is now a view of the proposed new A Street, and again, the end of the cul-de-sac, where you see the same building we were looking at on the left-hand side, and you start seeing the smaller buildings to the right. This is also where we begin our pedestrian walkway off the monument sign here, going back in between the buildings here. This is a view, again, of the two buildings as you're now looking due east. So you have the non-docks building on the left-hand side, and then the other buildings going down. Again, we were looking for a way to not only just enhance with the ample landscape, but provide a pedestrian walkway which progresses the entire length of this building, going towards the area way in the back where the smallest building is located. Very much a way to walk for pedestrians all the way through as opposed to looking outward. So the design intent is to look into the building area that we're designing as opposed to looking out toward the surrounding areas, which contains the rail spur on the north side and the very tapered corner on the very east end of our site. And you see here, this is the end of that proposed walkway. This is the smallest building you have in the foreground, building 6, with our larger patio area, employee eating areas, a way to encourage people to be out of the buildings, not always be inside our buildings. A couple of things I again want to point out is, again, the consistency in the type of architectural elements, maintaining 360 degree on all sides. As you can tell, even the corner of this building, which is the rear side of the smaller building 5, still has ample amount of glazing, color tones to segregate and divide the building size. And this is a reverse view. You have now building 6 that we were just looking at previously on the right-hand side, and you see the employee patio area in the foreground, and as well as the landscaping that we're proposing, and also the fact that Cochrane's way up at the top of the hill up here. And again, this highlights the pedestrian walkway within the site with the red lines going all the way across. So you see the main area for that central main entry point you can see here, highlighted at the very end of the east side of the site, and that's a plan view and large view of the patio employee area as sort of our highlight end of that pedestrian walkway. You can see the ample amount of landscaped and tree covering, open trees, or open seating areas that we have for employees to be out of the buildings and still enjoy the area that we're creating with our design landscape. And this is a view from Easy Street looking towards the wetlands with the larger building 2 in the background. Again, the design, the placement of that building, even with the dock doors facing towards Easy Street, you do not see it because of the combination of the screen walls that were between the building and the wetlands itself, but also the fact of the differences in height that the building site has that we took advantage of. And see, here you see the different elements that highlight the different color elements, the highlights of the architectural features at all corners of the building, combination of upper glass, lower glass, colored paintings, very much an earth tone palette that we're using for all of the buildings. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than free to answer them.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patrick Duras. I'm with Newmark Knight Frank, commercial real estate broker here in Ventura County, North Los Angeles. This is our 3rd project here with ZBEC. This site, the Murphy site, has been one that, being in the industrial business for a long time, has been looked at. A lot of people have tried to figure it out, and it's one we've all scratched our heads. So with ZBEC, commend them and the team for being able to put this together, because to get around some of the issues that you have here to build what they're doing, I think is a tall task, and they're the group to do it. From an overall market perspective, this product is sorely needed. We're at a 1% vacancy rate in Simi Valley, sub that in Simi Valley. Over the past 12 months, I've seen and represented some companies here in the market that would have liked to have stayed in Simi Valley or be here. We had a 115,000 square foot aerospace lease happen in Moore Park last year that wanted to be here. We just moved a cosmetics company to 60,000 square feet that was here in Simi Valley, wanted to stay here, and just moved to Chatsworth. Another 45,000 square foot manufacturer that wanted to be here moved to Thousand Oaks. They're now expanding to 100,000 square feet. And another 55,000 square foot tenant that I had grown from 5,000 square feet to 55,000 square feet. We could not find a space here in Simi Valley. Lives here, employees are from here, could not find it. So This project, I think the way it's been designed, we've had a lot of input with ZBEC just to meet market demand. We've got a variability of sizes, different types of business that can be accommodated. I estimate probably 500 to 1,000 permanent jobs that would come into the city and would allow businesses to grow and or move to this location. So again, this accommodates a variety of uses, from the high-tech manufacturing to biotech to warehousing distribution. And I think the way this design has worked is really we'll be able to accommodate that, and we'll see a big, quick lease up. One other thing I'd like to mention is we've done several of these projects here throughout the region, and the economic activity outside of the buildings that we've seen kind of come from this. We just finished a 500,000 square foot building, a project in Thousand Oaks, multiple buildings, and there were 3 buildings that were office oriented that sat vacant for 7 years and 10 years when Amgen left. And the tenants that took those industrial buildings for manufacturing purposes and other distribution purposes have now absorbed those buildings in the past 12 months. And the amount of economic activity and vibrancy that we see through that has been staggering. So we see the same thing here, and if you have any questions about the market, and how these buildings fit in, but sorely needed, and we think it'll bring a lot of good jobs to the city.
Anyone else?
I think we can open up for questions.
Actually, I do have a question for Mr. Cruz, but as a courtesy, any other commissioners have a question of the applicant?
I just have one.
Commissioner Rice?
Could you come up? In the rear of this property along the railroad tracks, it's conditioned to have a 6-foot-high fence.
Right.
Would you find that adequate? And the reason why I ask is along the railroad tracks, I would think that there'd be probable that people would try to go over that fence, and a 6-foot fence is not much of a deterrent. So would you be willing to go with, say, an 8-foot fence if you were able to do that?
Well, I'm not sure if, our main concern is obviously security of the building occupants itself.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those three smaller buildings are all facing on the away from that towards the south, because that's the area we can secure where more of their activity would be taking place.
Yeah.
The building itself will have to be secure with its own security alarm system,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not too worried about that one. The fence is just a division between us and that property, because obviously it's distinct, but I understand in terms of your concern for that. Again, the other buildings, the fencing is more vibrant, I think, on the far west side, where the building actually has the dockside facing towards the rail itself. But obviously, yes, you can make it high, but how much higher on that one? I mean, we can also design the fence to have, say, a shepherd's hook on it, as opposed to something more fancy on that one, because the height itself can be climbed.
Yeah.
So it's more of a deterrent up to a point.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of Mr. Cruz? Mr. Cruz, could you go to the slide that showed the look from Easy Street over the wetlands to a distant building? That's not it.
Yeah.
That. Do you have a recall the trees in the distance? How many years after planting does this slide represent?
Usually the trees are a couple of years in there. I'm not sure specifically if it's a 5-year growth. That the trees that you're seeing within the bulk of our rendering presentations of the proposed tree outcrop.
Can you say that again?
About 5 years.
About 5 years? And what size, what gallon trees do you anticipate putting in this location to start?
I would have to look at the specific plans. I think they were either between 30 or 24 box sizes.
24, 36.
Okay. You heard my comments a little bit earlier, perhaps, regarding the wetlands and some anxiety that I have about, it's going to be blank. I mean, it's blank now, but it's going to be blank, and it's going to be blank in an area where it's going to be a whole lot more activity. You certainly don't want it to become blighted. I take it that it's not a homeowners association, but the association will be responsible for maintaining that property. Has there been any discussion about doing anything to prevent people from migrating onto that property, hanging out, camping, doing whatever they might do that might damage that property?
Yeah.
So the wetland that we are dedicating is, we'll be dedicating the land as part of a conservation easement, and we'll have some endowment to maintain the property. And the extent of what kind of fence that we can install is purely up to the jurisdiction Army Corps, because what their concern is more of how much the disturbance, of the wetlands. So they may not permit us to put any types of a post or the fence system around it. But we do have to come into agreement as part of the conservation easement that we are to maintain the wetland a certain period of the time. And also, once the development is complete, there's a lot more traffic and pedestrians walking around. I'm pretty sure that would itself will prevent from any blighted activities on the site.
Have you had conversations with the Army Corps of Engineers with respect to what they would allow from the perspective of any kind of decorative but actually utility fencing, for example, metal tube fencing that would separate that out, people would understand that this is a wetland. You have some signs every 40 feet or 40 yards that says "See me wetlands" or whatever the name of your company is. Something to that effect. Have you had those conversations?
Yes, we are in communication with the Army Corps. And one thing is so difficult on this side, especially right up against the Easy Street, is categorized as freshwater marsh. So as far as what we can do at this point is we can put the post sign on there to not to go beyond this point of boundaries. But they're more concerned about constructing any type of fence. If we need to build a fence right up front of this wetland, we may have to dig further down. We got to have more infrastructure maintained to posts in place, because essentially you're pretty much putting a post on top of the water. So that determination is still in the review. We haven't got the final resolution yet, but that's definitely in the works.
Now, if the Army Corps of Engineers has, in essence, sort of power of fiat on this, I mean, they could say, no, you can't do that. Let's suppose that we condition something on this property. I don't know that the Commission would want to do this. This is just me talking at this point, okay? And I've not spoken with anybody else regarding these ideas, not even staff. But if we were to condition something on there, such as what I've been talking about, subject to Army Corps of Engineer vetoing, that, I mean, so that we would have to, give in to what the Army Corps of Engineers requires, would that be something that you would be willing to consider?
Well, first, I'm afraid that has to be the determination. So once we give this land to Army Corps, it's no longer in our jurisdiction. I don't think it's under city's jurisdiction anymore, but we are obligated to maintain the land. So. But if there's any conflict, we'll definitely make it address.
So the short answer is no?
No.
Okay. Interesting. All righty. Any other questions of staff, of the applicant? Very good. Thank you. Thomas Hettering?
Do not wish to speak, but I'm in support of the project.
Very good. I wish I'd read that. Does not wish to speak and is in support of the project. All right. Doug Felbinger does wish to speak.
My name is Doug Felbinger. I own the industrial park immediately west of the old school district headquarters. It's up the hill just northeast of the subject site. As a vocal critic of the multifamily residential project proposed for this property when it was before the City Council in January 2017, I want to express my support for the ZBEC project. It's a project that's supportive of the city's goals and will improve the neighborhood. Instead of creating structural neighborhood conflicts as a JDA project would have done, the ZBEC project is fully in keeping with the nature of the neighborhood. Furthermore, it will develop the area that over the years has become a location for vagrancy and illegal activities. Although I think there's been progress made in CME's vagrancy issues over the last couple of years, putting this land into the hands of responsible ownership will help the city continue to get the upper hand on quality of life issues within the city. I want to express my appreciation to the city for rejecting the JDA project and holding out for this project. Just over 2 years ago, we had a developer who said this property would not be feasible for industrial development until 2048, and for that reason, multifamily residential should be allowed. Wow, that was just 2 years ago. I remember at the time my buddy Dieter Wolf, whose dad built much of Easy Street, implored the city to hold out for a good project, a project that would be compatible with the neighborhood. I'm glad the city stood up for the community and held out for a quality project. Please vote to approve the ZBEC project.
Thank you. Mac McLaughlin.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mac McLaughlin. I'm a representative with the Southwest Regional Carpenters Union. We'd like to speak in support of the project. We'd also like to speak on behalf of some of the workers in the area and see if the Commission could maybe put in place some requirements for local hire and local apprentices in this. And the company has already used union labor to do the project on Mercury Drive. So we would, again, like to support the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Joel Grinstead.
Good evening, Commissioners. Welcome aboard, John. I echo a lot of what Douglas said there. He hit the nail on the head, I believe. But then on the other hand, I've got to go completely against what the Carpenters Union said. It's not the city's business to put any constraints on a private property construction to ask them to use union work. I'm a contractor for 32 years, been in the industry for 43 years. There's good and bad in both, and it's not the city's job or any other's job to even ask that. I think it's, and unfortunately, since Commissioner Castleberry spoke with these people, I think you may have been out of line. I hate to say that. But anyways, I am very much in support of this project. I have a lot of industrial customers who need this type buildings. We have one on Union Place. In 3 years, they might have to move because they don't have a building. This would fit just perfect for them. They want to stay in CME because the aerospace projects that they do, if they move more than, I think it's 3 miles away, they have to go through a whole new permit process. They're within a half a mile of this place. This would be perfect for them. Again, it fits perfect for the area. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Maggie Kessley.
Good evening, Chair Hodge, and members of the Planning Commission. Welcome to John Tolson as our newest Planning Commissioner, and thank you for your willingness to serve. My name is Maggie Kessley, and I'm here on behalf of Mid-Valley Properties. Mid-Valley Properties owns and manages 1 million square feet of multi-tenant industrial property here in Simi Valley. We are still the largest landholder of this type of product, although ZBEC is giving us a run for the money. We have space ranging in size from 800 square feet to 85,000 square feet, with a broad range of tenant mix, mainly small manufacturing businesses. We are out of space. We have less than a 1% vacancy factor, and we have a waiting list for specific sizes. Mid-Valley Properties has been in this community since the 1970s, and I've actually been with them for 33 years. We've seen a lot of change during that time. One thing, though, that remains consistent is the need to preserve and develop the industrial properties. By doing so, it opens the doors to higher paying jobs, leading to home ownership and a community that supports its infrastructure. Keeping people in the community working with good paying jobs is what creates economic vitality and will take us out 30 years from now. We are out of both large and small industrial space, and this is not healthy for us, our tenants, or our economy. Larger tenants bring work for smaller tenants, which help to keep our tenants in business and our properties rented. It all works together well. So we are always a champion of industrial development. What we will mainly be missing in the market today is the product that is being proposed to you right now. I continue to get calls for sizes, for space that ranges in size from 7,000 to 50,000 square feet. And just today alone, I received 2 phone calls, one for 7,000 square feet, the other for 20,000 square feet, and we had to turn them away. And they had already called multiple people before getting to me. We truly need this product for the good of our community, for now and into the future. So I hope that you will support and approve what is before you so it can move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no other cards unless I've misplaced one. Is there anyone else in the chamber who wishes to speak? Seeing none, are there any comments from staff regarding statements made during the public hearing?
Yeah, Chairman Hodge, I just want to clarify that. The condition C8 on page 44 does reference the requirement to install landscaping around the perimeter of the wetland, outside the wetland, and the suggestion to add fencing is, and signage is feasible, and that could be written to be required subject to any approval by the Department of Fish and Wildlife or the Army Corps of Engineers. So that condition could be applied subject to their approval if desired.
Did you say that was condition C8?
Condition C8 we could add on to that condition if the commission desires to add more decorative fencing to help deter the public from walking through that wetland area. That's a suggestion.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. I actually have that written, highlighted in my notes here, but I have to admit I didn't understand it. Okay. Very good. Any other comments from staff? Would the applicant like to respond to any of the comments regarding statements made during the public hearing?
No, sir.
No? Very good. If there are no further questions, we will close the public testimony portion of the hearing and limit discussions between the members of the commission and staff. Questions?
No questions.
No questions.
I'm pretty good.
All right, then I'll bring up my question I had about
The water line?
well, no, apparently the water thing, there were those couple of issues. I mean, I think that we need to determine whether or not there's consensus or not without having to vote on them. So is there consensus on the notion that the applicant should work with Callegas, and Callegas should provide a approval that they have no objection, rather, to the project being built as it relates to their water line that goes under this project?
I agree with you on that.
Okay. Any problem with sort of consensus with that? All right. No. Now let's talk about the wetland area. My thought is this is a little bit less decorative and a little more. The idea of having some fencing or some separation is a little more practical. And this is empty space, which is open land, which is going to remain open land for a nice long time. There are times where it's going to be moist. There are times when it's going to be quite wet, and there's going to be times where it's going to be dry. I'm concerned about, the applicant at this point has indicated that they're not interested in putting up any kind of fencing. Apparently, there's going to be some landscaping according to, or rather in compliance with, condition C8. However, I still see this as a potential area of blight, of misuse, of an area that, it's something we want to be mindful of because it's adverse not only for this applicant's future project, but rather in addition to projects that are nearby. And I would like to see something, and I'm curious about the comments of the other commissioners, as to whether or not to add to C8 a condition, obviously subject to, I guess, does the Army Corps of Engineers have veto power on this?
They may. I would subject it to or condition it based on preemption or jurisdictional issues.
Okay. Preemption. Okay. So instead of me going on and, about this, I think you understand where I stand on this. What is everybody's feeling with respect to having something to sort of separate this property so that it's understood that it's not for any untoward use other than as a wetland?
Nobody else is speaking. Well, I'm okay with signing. I don't know about fencing. I just think that, I don't know. I signage definitely, this is a wetland, stay out and whatever. I think that if it does become a trash dump, then it becomes the problem of the applicant to keep it clean, right? Isn't that part of the condition?
I think so.
I would think so, especially since it's very visible because it's right there along the street and everybody would see it, and so.
Okay.
Relatively.
So you're in favor of posting?
I'd be in favor of posting it.
Okay. Commissioner Castleberry?
I would concur with Commissioner Rice. We definitely need signage. I don't know if we're going to be able to get the fencing given the Army Corps of Engineers and the fact the wetlands come right up to Easy Street. I would anticipate that the applicant does not want this to become a dumping ground as well because all of their tenants will be seeing this driving in and out of the property. So I think that the signage is a definite requirement and we should include that within our agreement, but I don't think that we necessarily need to require fencing.
Commissioner Mann? Commissioner Tolson?
Sure. I think there should be some additional decorative landscaping just because it's an eyesore to me. But fencing is not necessary. And the signage is, I like the signage.
Commissioner Mann?
Okay, I guess I'm the only one that says yes for the fencing. Only because a good friend of mine has a store right across from the wetlands, and many times you've either seen or I've seen people off-roading on the wetlands, or you can see the tracks of cars going off-roading in the wetlands. Again, it's something that is probably the developer's problem, but I think we could avoid problems if we put up some kind of low-level fencing, 30 inches or whatnot, along Easy Street. If truly it's a wetland, I see the city has a condition that they put a 10-foot sidewalk on the north side of Easy Street. That would be going into the wetland, correct? So that would be subject to the Army Corps of Engineers approval as well? That's item, page 24, item B16, boy 16. Applicant must design a 10-foot sidewalk on the north side of Easy Street. Because I don't think there's a sidewalk there now, is there?
It's just a curb right now.
So we're conditioning the applicant to put a 10-foot wide sidewalk into the wetland now. Wouldn't the Army Corps of Engineers have some kind of say over whether or not that sidewalk's even permissible?
It's of staff's opinion that we believe this Army Corps will allow the sidewalk.
Okay. Then I would like to see some kind of low-level fencing on the front side and certainly down the sides as well. We don't need a 6-foot or an 8-foot. We don't need a tubular steel, but some kind of fencing, certainly for posting as well. But I'd like to see some kind of, on the other side of the sidewalk, something that's going to delineate that as a wetland, post it, fence it off, low level in the front, maybe higher in the sides or whatever, just to kind of, preclude people from going into that wetland area. Again, all this is subject to the Army Corps of Engineers approval.
I mean, you may be thinking of like similar to a split rail fence the Park District uses.
Something that's not, 6 foot tall and nothing that blocks out the wetland, but something more of a deterrent from somebody that decides that they want to off-road, or, somebody wants to climb over a 3-foot high fence or a 6-foot fence and wander through the wetland, they're going to do it. But if it's somebody that's going to drive over it because it's a muddy field and we're going to go off-roading, something more to determine or deter that.
Yeah, my concern is consistent with what Commissioner Mann is saying. I'm thinking about kids on bicycles and using it as and look, it's there now, and it's subject to being abused right now, and I frankly don't know what the condition of it is specifically. It's on Easy Street, and Easy it has that access to it, but we're substantially modifying the opportunity for people and the intensity of use in the area. Substantially impacting the intensity of use. I'm thinking a little 4-foot, wall, decorative, sort of identifies it as what it is, keeps folks from riding their, their bicycles or whatever, and then, something which is more. It's not a barrier. It's not. I'm not asking for 10-foot steel-high.
Come on.
No, it's, I think I'm asking for something which is a little more realistic and, you know, sort of identifies it as a wetland more than just a sign that, you know, look, there are, and these are simple realities. I understand that the new owner of the project or the organization that's responsible for maintaining this property isn't going to want it to be a problem, or isn't going to want it to be misused. But there are projects in the city that the city has had to sue because they haven't maintained their landscaping. They haven't maintained the, you know, and it's a very large project in the city of Simi Valley. I won't identify it. But you would have thought for sure that they would have been very interested, highly motivated to maintain the landscaping throughout, to maintain it clean, not to allow it to become dirty and trash-ridden. No, they didn't do that. And so, and this is something which has a lot of visibility and sharply impacts the success of the particular project. I would very much like to see something subject to the jurisdictional preemption by the Army Corps of Engineers that includes as a condition of what we're talking about some sort of decorative wall. I don't want to identify what it is, or some sort of barrier, not a wall, some sort of a barrier that, like Commissioner Mann said, allows a great deal of visibility, is not doesn't, you know, hide the area, that actually provides a little bit, you know, provides some visual contact with it. So people don't start thinking it's some sort of, you know, industrial waste site. I mean, you know, something that's nice. And I think that would be a real benefit. It would eliminate a lot of problems, and we would be able to have a little more confidence that this property won't fall into disrepair and become a blight for the area.
So, Chairperson, you're saying that you want something more substantial than a split rail fence?
I don't know. I'd like something that I mean, it could be this tall. It could be 4 feet.
Yeah.
It could be some sort of tubular steel, something, you know, with 1-inch steel, 6 inches of open, 1-inch steel, 6 inches of open, whatever it might be. Something decorative, but at the same time provide some utility for separating this area out from the intensity of the use which it's going to be exposed to. Are we still 3-2 against, or are there?
I'm willing to go with the split rail fence. And the only reason why I just don't have any idea what I mean. I understand what you're saying, but I don't know what that looks like in a project like this.
Well, and I don't know what I don't want to look. I don't want to.
I just can't visualize.
I think I would. I think that I would rather leave it open to to staff to approve of a design in the future, but to have there be a condition that they come up with a acceptable form of a fence or a barrier of some sort that would get this done. And I'm open to their design features and to something that might be really good, and let staff approve it.
So we'd leave it at the discretion of staff?
That we would ask that the condition would require that staff approve it. I think that we've made ourselves pretty clear, or at least I've made myself I've done my best to make myself clear as to what I'm hoping for. And I appreciate Commissioner Mann's comments regarding making sure that it remains open and visible, those kinds of things. I think that's a good idea. But that would be my recommendation with respect to that, and to condition approval on that. And otherwise, honestly, I think this is just a heck of a project. So that would be, do we have some consensus on that?
Commissioner Tolson, I'm just curious what his thoughts are.
I'm okay with the fence.
All right.
Shorter than taller, 30 inches, 4 feet, maybe too tall.
That could be later approved of by staff. And so, because I don't, look, we're not an art jury. I don't want to sit here and design a fence.
Correct.
I don't think that's appropriate. Okay, so I like the idea of, subject to staff's approval.
But by doing that, it becomes like it's dedicated versus just a vacant piece of property left over.
Yes, yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Any other comments before we close the public hearing? And actually, the public hearing is closed. But before we make comments with respect to our thoughts regarding the project in toto. All right. Seeing none, anybody want to say what they think generally?
I can go ahead and start. I think that some of our public commenters hit it right on the head. This is a sorely needed project. We know that industrial space is something that is lacking in the city. It directly contributes to jobs and revenue. This site has been difficult to develop. I know it predates my time on this commission, but I remember following this before it was up here on the dais, that this is not an easy property to develop. I think it fits the general plan. It's already zoned for what it's meant to be. It fits the surrounding land use. There's community support for this project. While I am inclined to support local hire and local apprenticeship requirements, this is not, I don't believe that we're the forum for that. I believe that's the city council's jurisdiction. So I will leave that at that. And the last thing I will say is it did have the support of our neighborhood council in the area, so that always weighs heavily on me as well.
I like the project. So that's it. I don't have anything else to say.
Commissioner Tolson?
We need this desperately, and it's good for our city for now and for many years to come. I'm totally in favor with the slight changes that we've talked about.
Commissioner Mann?
ZBEC has so far been great in the community, but what we're approving tonight is not those buildings are not that design. We're just approving the track map and the permit for those buildings to be done.
It is. What's before you tonight is the plan development permit.
Okay.
Which is the site plan elevations, floor plans, or not floor plan necessarily, but the configuration of the buildings that you're looking at tonight, as well as the conceptual landscape plan.
But the plan development permit is separate from the tentative track map.
Yeah, there's two different resolutions in your packet
Okay.
tonight, or conditions of approval regarding those different acts. Yes.
So we're approving the 3 lots, or the 3 lots plus Street A, and then as a separate thing, we're doing the buildings.
Correct.
But the developer is not tied to those buildings. The developer could sell off the lots and those buildings would never be built.
Yeah, in theory, yeah. But
Okay.
if anybody bought that, this is what they would be building. Unless they came back for another revision to the plan development permit to put a new type of building on there.
Okay. So, I mean, bottom line, like I said, ZBEC has been great with the building they've done. I really, really believe you will be building these, and I hope they are, because CME is desperately needing industrial space. And when you build industrial space, you're bringing jobs, you're bringing people into the community. So you've done a great job, and I'm in favor of the project. I would just like to see this project certainly come to fruition for what you have presented tonight. And then, of course, the fence around the wetland area. Other than that, we're good.
Very good. Yeah, I'd like to start off by making some very specific findings. I believe that the mitigation monitoring plan that you've come up with is good. I had an opportunity to review in detail some of the findings about how the project could have an impact on certain environmental issues, specific with the construction and then, of course, the use of the project in the area. But I also found, and I didn't see anything in the staff report, but I think this is sort of implied, 80% of the people of Simi Valley who have a job have to leave the city in order to go to work, which means that they have to drive to some city that's further away than Simi Valley. So instead of driving from one end of Simi Valley to another, or very even close, just a matter of a mile or so, folks have to drive several miles or many miles to where they have an opportunity to work. Some of those businesses or industrial projects that were discussed tonight about tenants who have left the city because they couldn't be here. So if the folks who live in Simi Valley have an opportunity to work here, then they're going to be driving a whole lot less distance, and that's going to have a very favorable impact on some environmental issues. So I think that although there's going to be an additional 1,700 business trips to this, that it's going to be trucks, it's going to be diesels, yes, that's all true, but it's going to be offset, I believe, by the opportunity of people to work here and not have to drive as far, and then other people to come here, and then we will, inure to the benefit of those people purchasing, before they leave town, when they come in early, when they go to lunch, these kinds of things, the benefits will be substantial. And I agree with you, and I believe that what you said before, or rather, this gentleman here, Mr. DeRoss, I believe, about the positive impacts that it will have on other locations around the city, and in the areas of the properties where you've built, in terms of office growth, et cetera. The city needs to be balanced. You need to have a certain amount of residential, a certain amount of business, a certain, industrial parks, a certain amount of retail, and all the other things of a certain amount you have to have. And that's the proper way to build the city. And I'm very excited, and I agree with the speaker who talked about the city council some year in 2017 turning down a proposed zoning pre-screen that would have included residential. I think that the primary reason that at the time Mayor Huber turned it down was because it's just a bad place for people to live. It just isn't, a good place for folks to live, and that was his primary consideration. And I'm very enthusiastic and excited that this company has come forward and proposed, from what I can see, is a very well-designed project. And I'm very enthusiastic that the Commission voted to support an amendment to this that would, I think ultimately, the thing that we were talking about with the wetland, I think it's going to benefit you in the future. And I'm sorry that it kind of cost you an extra few bucks to get that done, but I think it will benefit you mightily over the course of time. And so I'm enthusiastic about that. I think it's a terrific project. I was very excited when I saw that this was coming forward. I think that it will provide some very needed jobs in an area that people just can't find locally. This is the kind of, you talked about 500 to 1,000 jobs. I believe it. I believe that they're better paying jobs, as you've discussed. And I'm enthusiastic about the project. And with that, I would entertain a motion, and remembering that it would be include as amended.
Do we have to reading of the resolution?
Oh. Wait a minute. Let me turn the page. May I please have a reading of the resolution?
Agenda item 11A1, resolution number SVPC04-2019, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Simi Valley approving tentative tract map number TT6018, planned development permit number PD-S-1060, the mitigated negative declaration, and the mitigation monitoring plan.
As amended.
As amended.
As modified.
Oh, as modified, rather.
As modified.
Very good. Chair will now entertain a motion.
I move to adopt a resolution approving PDS 1060, TT 6018, and mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring plan as modified.
Motion was made by Commissioner Rice. May I have a second?
Second.
Second was made by Commissioner Tolson. Call for the vote. The motion passes. The appeal period for PDS 1060 is 14 calendar days. The appeal period for TT 6018 is 10 calendar days. Thank you very much. Okay, may we have oral communications and reports from staff?
Thank you, Chairman Hodge. A couple of notes here. I again want to extend a warm welcome to Commissioner John Tolson. Very grateful to have him aboard. We gave his introduction on Monday night at the City Council, and he was very well received. So thank you, John, for coming aboard. When we say hello to one person, we got to say goodbye to another person, and I want to say thank you very much for the service of our recording secretary, Lori Gore. Lori Gore's been with us for about 1.5 years, and she's done a fantastic job in everything that we do in the planning department on a day-to-day basis. She does a great job here every Wednesday night when we're here together as a planning commission, and we're really going to miss her, but she's going to be closer to her home with her husband on work days and shorter commute. So it's a win-win-win for her. So we're very happy to have Lori with us. She did a fantastic job. Thank you, Lori. A couple of other comments. On March 25th at the City Council, we're going to have an upcoming item on that agenda, and that's going to be an urgency ordinance for our wireless ordinance update. The Federal Communication Commission has enacted some legislation that does take effect on April 15th, and we are trying to get our wireless ordinance into compliance from where it is today. And so that item will be going on March 25th to the council. And then other than that, the next meeting with the Planning Commission is scheduled for March 27th.
Any commissioners have anything to report?
I'll go ahead and start. So last week, myself and Commissioner Rice attended the California League of Cities Planning Commissioner Academy. It was a lot of really great information. As a first-time commissioner, it was really nice being able to meet commissioners from around the state. And it's really interesting that cities from as small as Fowler in the Central Valley, who I sat with at the very first session, to the city of Long Beach, who we had lunch with at one day, of 500,000 people, we are all facing the same issues. And it was very, I don't want to say comforting, but it was nice to know that it's not just our city that's facing a lot of these development questions that we have. There were some really great informational presentations on SB 35, downtown revitalization, which I think the city of Livermore up in the Bay Area has some great examples for our city. There's something called the Texas Wrap that we've now learned that I know Commissioner Rice is very excited about. The one thing I do have a request of staff is to have an agenda item at an upcoming commission meeting to go over vehicle miles traveled rather than level of service, which we're going to be required to implement by 2020 according to the state. So it would be nice to understand the changes we're going to see in our CEQA documents and the new requirements that the Planning Commission is going to be looking at in terms of vehicle miles traveled. Other than that, I hope to attend again so I can take some of the more advanced courses. I didn't really get to go to all the courses because a lot of the advanced courses were at the same time that I was taking the beginners courses. And that's all I have to report.
That's a lot.
Commissioner Rice? I'll have you know that's more than I have ever.
It was pretty fun. He'd go to one, I'd go to the opposite. It was great. And it is pretty amazing to meet people from such a wide variety of different cities and have them give the same complaints. So even cities like Buellton, which has a population of 5,000, has a homeless problem. You know, it was mind-boggling to me. Other things, we had a presentation on emergency preparedness, and since we are one of those cities that has an urban wilderness interface, that's something that we definitely need to be aware of. We were given a presentation on tiny homes and cannabis regulations, those coming down the line. And the scariest part for me was the legislative update and all the different legislation going through Sacramento. Quite honestly, it was terrifying. There are like 2,500 bills that are currently pending in the Assembly and the Senate, and a lot of them have to do with housing. And many of them would strip away our ability as a city to do what we would like to do. Basically force us to not allow or to not make requirements for parking, to allow people to build a story higher than what we normally would allow, be forced to accept low-income housing in places where we wouldn't necessarily want it. And many of these, even in single-family home neighborhoods, like a small lot, people would basically be allowed to put in a fourplex and change the character of seeming neighborhoods. But a lot of this, some of it's going to go through. It's just, which ones. And so we just have to be very proactive. We have to make sure that our design guidelines are up to date, because that's one way that we can prevent some of these things. As long as we have the design guidelines done ahead of time, then even with these projects where we may not be able to say no, they still will have to meet many of those design guidelines. Finally, the last thing I would like to do is, at a future time, if it's possible, I'd like for us to bring up the TAPO specific plan and talk about that at some time. So, but other than that, I have nothing else to report.
That's very good, thank you. And thanks for scaring the heck out of us.
Oh my God.
Anyone else?
Thanks for the welcome. I'm happy to be on board.
Very good. We're happy to have you. It's nice to have a full crew. It really is. Commissioner Mann?
I lead a boring life. I did not go to the thing. And those meetings, yes, they make you wonder why we do what we do. They are scary. So kudos to you for going. I look forward to getting more information.
Very good. This concludes the meeting of today's date, March 13, 2019. The next scheduled meeting will be on March 27, 2019. Meeting's adjourned.
Fantastic.
Good night, guys. Good job, Tim.